It's been a while since I've done a sketchbook doodling video, but I wanted to do a very relaxed video, just sit back and draw whatever I felt like drawing or whatever I end up drawing, so that's what we're gonna do today. I don't often show my actual sketching process in videos, and the main reason behind that is it's just very inconvenient for me to do so. It's a little bit of a mixture of it's stressful to sketch on camera because you're laying down the base work and lots can go wrong, and it's just that like little voice in the back of your head where it's like added pressure because recording. And then on top of that, it's also really inconvenient for me to sketch while on camera. And the reason behind that is because I have to focus on other things instead of just drawing. I have to make sure my sketchbook is flat, I'm not moving it around a lot, my head's not in frame, my hair's not in frame, a bunch of other factors that go into recording, just in general, that make sketching a lot harder. For the most part, obviously, I can function around like coloring and line work and stuff like that when it comes to recording because I already have the base sketch down and that makes such a big difference when it comes to recording, but it's just not something I do often because of how inconvenient it is for me. But for this video, I figured I would just record as I went. There was no harm in it. I already liked the sketch that I had started. So this is my sketching process. You guys don't see it often, but it's just sketching. It's very simple. I get asked a lot what pencil I use for sketching, and this is a Prismacolor color erase pencil in the shade Rose, I believe. I kind of go back and forth between using this, which is a wood pencil, as well as the Pilot Color Eno mechanical pencils, which are obviously mechanical pencils. I think in the long run, I definitely prefer the colored pencils, the wooden pencils, over the mechanical ones, but there's a lot of times where I go through phases of solely using the Pilot Color Enos for like months at a time, and then I switch back to the wooden pencils, and then back to the mechanical ones, and just a whole lot of back and forth with those. But I think in the long run, I prefer the wooden pencils. They just work better for me, and I like the way they feel, and it's just very nice working with those. Both of them are really good though. Both of them provide color line work, and they have a very large range of colors that the brands offer, which is cool. So if you're interested in looking for pencils to do colored sketches with, I highly recommend them. I've mentioned it before, I'm sure, but I don't often sketch with graphite. I just don't like it. It's really smudgy, and especially for me, when it comes to finished pieces, I tend to work in the steps of sketching and then coloring and then line work versus sketching, line work, and then color. It's just what works best for me. I really like doing it that way, but in doing it that way, if I used graphite pencils, the actual graphite would get stuck under the color, whether it be I'm using alcohol markers or gouache or watercolor, and whatever graphite peeks through is ugly because it's gray, versus when using pink or red colored pencils or mechanical pencils, whatever it may be, to actually do the sketching, I feel like it really enhances the piece and adds like some kind of warmth to it, and I don't mind when I actually see the initial like sketch peeking through because it's not gray. So just personal preference. There's nothing wrong with using graphite. Every now and then I'm like almost tempted to use graphite, but I obviously don't. So I really like using colored pencils, or colored, technically not colored pencils as in colored pencils, but colored lead to do sketches. It works well for me. I've been doing it for years and I really like it. As far as the characters in this piece goes though, these are my two original characters, Elestren and Rosemary. Elestren is on the left and Rosemary is on the right. I don't draw my original characters very often. I just personally, I really like drawing fan art. I'm sure that's very obvious by now, but I just find myself having a lot more fun and being more motivated to draw and having more inspiration to draw when the subject of the piece is fan art. I know that's not everyone's cup of tea, but that's my cup of tea, and I am not sorry about it, I guess. I know a lot of people ask me to like draw more of my original characters or talk about my original characters because people get excited about other people's characters, but I haven't really put a whole lot of thought into pretty much any of my original characters. I have 4 that I've developed like world building and storytelling with, but I haven't like shared that anywhere, and that's the only reason that they're that fully developed is because when I was like 14-ish, give or take a couple years, I actually started writing and illustrating technically a graphic novel over the course of 2 sketchbooks telling a story between these characters as well as a couple other background characters. But it's really cringy, it's very embarrassing to look at, but at the same time like I'm proud of myself for doing that because it's a lot of work, because I pretty much made it up as I went along first and foremost, which is horrible, very chaotic. And when I say made it up as I went along, I mean I was making up the story as I was illustrating and writing it in my sketchbook, so it was not very well planned. It's very much so a mess, but at the same time, I'm proud of myself for when I was that age for doing that, because that's a lot of work and that's a lot of drawing. And while the panels don't necessarily look good any of the time, it's really cool to look back on that and be like, dang, that's really cool. I did that when I was a teenager. But those are pretty much the only characters that I've put a lot of thought into. I actually, over the course of this voiceover, keep forgetting Elestren's name, and I keep having to go and look it up. And that says how much love and care I put into my original characters. I made these two a couple years ago, and I don't really have a whole lot of story behind them. Elestren is an angel or a fallen angel, I haven't decided yet. Rosemary's a witch, and she has a snake familiar. They're dating, but aside from that, I really don't have much going on for these characters. When it comes to creating characters for myself, I'm really bad at naming them first and foremost. I'm really bad at drawing them a second time, so I just don't put a whole lot of thought into it. It's just not, like I said, not really my cup of tea. It's fun for a lot of people, but I personally prefer sticking with fan art. So if you've ever wondered, or if you've wanted me to share my characters with you, or if you're curious why I don't share my characters with you, it's because I don't really have too much to share. So sorry if you're interested in that. I don't think that'll change anytime soon. I'm just focusing more so on what I want to be making and what I want to focus my energy on. So that is the reason behind that. As far as this piece goes though, I'm using an artista sketchbook that they sent me to do a review on. That video will be coming in the next couple of weeks, but I had actually not tried watercolors or any kind of wet media in this sketchbook up until this point, so it was a really interesting process on using watercolors in the sketchbook because, like I said, never used wet media in the sketchbook before. I had no idea how it would react. This paper is not necessarily intended for watercolors. I think it's a mixed media sketchbook, but definitely not a watercolor sketchbook, but it actually held them really well. I don't know why, but recently I've been finding like weird amount of enjoyment in working with paper that can't necessarily handle watercolors and it buckles. It's like this weird amount of like charm is the best way I can describe it, where it's very charming when paper buckles to me right now, and that's very strange, but I'm working with it, and this paper buckled a tiny bit, and I really liked it. I think it's like nostalgic for me working with Canson XL mixed media paper because I really do genuinely like Canson's mixed media paper, but I haven't used one of their sketchbooks in a really long time because I've been trying to work with bound sketchbooks. I found I way much so prefer bound sketchbooks over spiral ones, so I haven't touched a Canson mixed media sketchbook in a really long time, and I think buckling reminds me of that sketchbook because I used watercolors and wet media as a whole a lot in those. So all things considered, this paper did handle this very well. Of course, I'll have a review in the future on this as well as the other products they sent me, but for the time being, I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. If you drew along with me, let me know what you drew below. This is probably the most you'll ever get about me talking about original characters, so if that's what you like, I hope this was enough to sate you. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.